Hello, Bible lovers, and welcome to Faith Spire. Today, we'll be looking at the background of an iconic and down-to-earth character in the Bible. What was his childhood like, and why did it look as if his father Jesse was hiding him in the wilderness to tend to the flock? But before we go into answering these questions, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our future videos. This is part of the David series. Enjoy! Much was not said about David's childhood, especially when his mother was the reason why he wasn't called when the prophet Samuel came to anoint the next king of Israel. He was only called when Samuel insisted that his presence was needed and that none would sit until David came. These incidents can be found in 1 Samuel chapter 16. God sent Samuel to go anoint the next king of Israel in the house of Jesse. After Jesse brought out all his sons, none was chosen as king. Then Samuel asked if there was any other son, to which Jesse replied that there is, the last one in the wilderness tending to the sheep. Why did Jesse hesitate to call David? Why did it look as if he was being hidden? The answer to this question cannot be found directly in Scripture, though we can get some clues. For example, in Psalm 51 verse 5, David said, "In sin and iniquity did my mother conceive me." Could there be deeper meanings to this phrase, apart from human beings being born in sin from childbirth? We can get the answer from what we call the Midrash. What is the Midrash? The Midrash is an ancient commentary on part of the Hebrew scriptures attached to the biblical context. The word itself means textual interpretation, study, or exegesis. In the Midrash, we see the story of Jesse and his wife, David's mother. Her name was Nitzevet, the daughter of Adel. Her husband Jesse, at the time, began to doubt his ancestral purity since he descended from Ruth, who was a Moabitess, Ruth 4 verse 17. Because of this, Jesse stopped having marital relations with his wife after giving birth to 7 sons and planned to marry his Canaanite servant to have children with her. However, the Canaanite servant was loyal to Jesse's wife and had pity on her. She divulged this plan of her husband's to her mistress. The servant therefore proposed a plan to secretly switch places with her mistress during the wedding night so Nitzevet could sleep with Jesse one more time. It's kind of like how Leah switched places with Rachel during her wedding night with Jacob in the book of Genesis. The switch was successful, and Nitzevet became pregnant with David, her 8th son. Nitzevet never revealed what she did to her husband, even when the pregnancy became obvious. Because of this misunderstanding, Nitzevet was taken as an immoral woman who got pregnant out of her wedding bed. When David was born, he was treated as an outcast in his own home. Now, picture this for a moment. David, a young boy, grew up in an environment where he was often overlooked, criticized, or ignored. Imagine the emotional toll it must have taken on him. He spent his days alone in the wilderness, tending to sheep, yet this was the very place where God was shaping his character. The wilderness became David's training ground, a place where he learned to protect the flock, fight off wild animals, and cultivate his dependence on God. Think about this. How often do we feel like we are in the wilderness of life, alone, unnoticed, and undervalued? Like David, we might feel rejected by those closest to us, yet it is in these moments that God is preparing us for something far greater. The very skills David learned in the wilderness were what later equipped him to defeat Goliath and lead Israel as its king. This story is not fact-checked, and no one knows if it is true or genuine. However, there are instances in the Bible that give us clues to the genuineness of the story. This also explains why Jesse, David's father, always kept him in hiding. He didn't want to identify with his illegitimate son, but perhaps because of the love he had for his wife, he kept him anyway. Whatever it is, one thing that we get from this story is how gracious and just God is. He sees everything and knows everything. To men, what we do might be mistakes, but not with God. God used David's situation to build him up and make him a potential king, even before the arrival of prophet Samuel. This story shows us that God can use you, and he accepts you even though others, including your family, might not accept you. This was why David made the statement that the stone that the builders have rejected is now the chief cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our sights. Meaning that he who has been rejected by others was accepted by God and placed on high by Him. Let me encourage you with this. Don't let your rejection discourage you from being the person you ought to be. Yours may not be as serious as David's, but we have all experienced rejection one way or another, either being rejected from a job, from a group, and so on. But no matter the rejection, always remember that God has not rejected you, and it's not the end of your story. Look back on David's life. From an outcast to a shepherd, from a shepherd to a giant slayer, and from a giant slayer to the king of Israel. Isn't that incredible? It's a testament to how God turns what seems like rejection into redirection. So, greatness is ahead. Wear a positive attitude, keep walking, and trust in God's plan for your life. Even if the world says no, God says yes. Your story is not over. It's just getting started. Stay faithful, and God will lift you up in His time.